Hello and welcome to the fifth and sadly last edition of the Classic Dinner Party podcast. After concluding our time reading J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, I, Duncan Bernath, am joined by my mother Kristy Bernath.
Hello.
And we will be discussing pages 133 through 205. Today's date is January 30th, and we are located in my home in the Prinsengracht of Amsterdam to share our thoughts, perspectives, and ideas about our chosen book. To start, Mom, I want to ask you what you think about both the climax and ending of the text.
Well, that's a tricky question because if you think about the book and you think about the I don't know, is it 5 days that we spend with Holden throughout the time he was expelled and he's trying to kill time before he gets to go home on a Wednesday? It seems like there is no real climax and we're just going through a series of challenges with Holden and seeing his small victories and small losses that he goes through in those 3 days. I just didn't really think there was a huge climax. The most thing, you just think that he is just trying to connect with people the entire time, and there's hits and losses and wins, and it doesn't happen. Like, for example, sometimes I wondered if Sally, when he asked Sally at the end of their date, he asked Sally to run away with them. Maybe that could have been the climax, but she said no. Or if something would have happened with Mr. Antolini, that could have been the climax. But he woke up and got out of there. What do you think?
Well, I agree with your point, and I also just wanted to say, like, similar to you, one of the things that I enjoyed most about The Catcher in the Rye was that there was no distinctive climax and instead of like the introduction, rising and falling, action, conclusion, this book seemed to follow Holden through his hardships of his 16th year on Earth. But however, Holden did come to his senses and I guess find who he really is towards the end of the book, a strong, smart, independent young adult. And in these final chapters, we learn that Holden had plans to leave to the West Coast, and I guess just throw his life away and trying to begin on a new page.
Yeah.
And like after I heard about these plans, like every page, I just hoped that he would stop, that he would cancel his plans. And this never happened until page 111 when he told Phoebe that he was going to leave, but she convinced him to stay. And for that, that was my climax.
Yeah, that's good. I agree. Phoebe is such a she seems like she's the only person in Holden's life that he respects, besides his memory of Allie, who that's his best friend and his, basically what guides him throughout the book. Do you imagine that future generations will also read this classic book?
Well, as this book was written 65 years ago, and is actually the 12th most sold fiction book in the history, with over 65 million worldwide sales, and is still analyzed in schools today, I don't see this book fading in popularity anytime soon.
You knew that. That's good. That's a good stat to know. You're true. I agree with you there.
And I was reading, as I was reading this book, chapter by chapter, you and I discussed what we thought about Holden, and we had totally different viewpoints. I thought that, I guess he was in a sense cool or interesting and someone that I might want to be friends with, but on the other hand, you thought the complete opposite. What did you mean by this, and I guess how was it seen in the text?
No, I do think Holden is interesting, and this is something that we've talked about throughout our podcast. When I read the book when I was your age, I thought he was cool and romantic and dangerous, but now as a 45-year-old reading it, we have different opinions because I think that he's impulsive and sad and really like clinging to his childhood because he never really got a chance to he never really got a chance to say goodbye to his childhood because as soon as his brother died, he kind of was forced into this adulthood, it seemed like. And for some reason, I see, when I read the book when I was your age, I didn't even remember that Allie died. But for me, Allie dying and him never being able to say goodbye to his best friend and brother like that is the driving force behind Holden.
I mean, I definitely see how you have a different viewpoint. I mean, being a mother of a teenager yourself, you can definitely, I guess, be more, alarmed about what Holden is doing, and
Exactly.
whereas what I guess I don't look up to people that do stuff like that, but I guess I think it's more cool rather than sad.
But see, I still think he's a kid, and I just want to mother him, take care of him,
Yeah.
and help him.
Okay, moving on. What is the best aspect of the partner read for you?
Oh, besides getting to sit and talk to you about books?
Mm-hmm.
Aw. You know what? I really miss when I had time when you guys went to bed at reasonable hours. I miss reading to you guys, the three of you boys, and we talk about A Wrinkle in Time or any of those great books that we used to read, The Hobbit. To me, this is a little bit of that, the grown-up version of that. Instead of me reading to you, we're reading together, and then we're talking about it. And the best part of reading this book together is seeing it through your eyes and just the different perspectives.
That's a great observation. Well, I think that's true, and I enjoyed it as well. But in addition, I just thought to say that I guess it was comforting and pleasant knowing that someone else is reading the same words that I read, experiencing, in a sense, the same emotions that I did, and having someone to talk about my ideas and opinions about all these chapters. And also, sometimes while I'll be reading a book I completely adore, I'll be in my bed wishing there was someone I could talk to about the book, and I guess now that you're reading this with me, I finally had the chance to.
I know what you mean, because it's almost like when you're reading a great book, it absorbs you so much. It's like you can see it like you're watching a movie, and I don't think we don't really ever watch movies alone. We always watch them together or with friends, and then you can talk about it. So this is like watching a movie together. Right?
In 5th grade, I used to always read the same book as my friend Matt, and I guess that was definitely a lot of fun knowing that after I turned off the light at nighttime, finishing a few pages, that I could go to school the next day talking to him about it. And that was a lot of fun.
The year of dystopia. Dystopia fiction after dystopia fiction books. That was fun.
And now that the book is complete, do you have one sentence, one phrase, and one word prepared to describe this text as a whole?
You know, I have a phrase. It goes, it's the classic phrase. I think it goes to the title of the book. It's when Holden was talking to Phoebe, and he's talking about the Robert Burns poem, and he says, if a body catch a body coming through the rye, and she corrects him and says it's really a body meets a body coming through. But this is where he's talking about, he thinks it's about children playing in a big field and running to the edge of the cliff, and he wants to save them. And to me, it makes, just like I said earlier, it's him mourning his childhood. He doesn't want other children. He wants to save them from jumping off into adulthood before they get a chance to say goodbye to their childhood. What about you? What do you think?
For sentence, I actually found a sentence. Although it was such a challenge to fit all of these experiences and emotions into one sentence, let alone a phrase or a word. But
one word is hard.
I did find one sentence, and on page 106, Salinger wrote, every time I came to the end of a block and stepped off the goddamn curve, I had this feeling that I'd never get to the other side of the street. I just thought I'd go down, 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 and nobody would ever see me again. And I thought that this one sentence summarized just what Holden fears and what will happen to himself. And I thought that it seems like he based all of his actions off this idea, and his fear of phoniness connects to this idea, and this entire concept of losing himself to someone who I guess blended in with the crowd.
I think that's the same time when he kept repeating to himself, please don't let me disappear, Allie, please don't let me disappear, Allie.
It is.
I totally agree. That was a really profound moment, and so sad, I thought. I wonder, he was afraid of just nobody caring.
And following this, I did find one phrase, and this phrase was on page 115, and says, life is a game that one plays according to the rules. And in the concluding chapters of this book, Holden spent a night at Mr. Antolini's, which is his former teacher and also favorite teacher. And rather than like a lighthearted small talk, Mr. Antolini gives Holden a good talking to and tells him that he needs to shape up and climb out of this slump that he's in right now. And while talking to him, this phrase is said, and this is basically exactly what Holden has not been doing. Holden regards this and even thinks about it all night long, and he thinks that maybe it is time to start following the rules, even though this following the rules is one of the things he hates most.
Yeah, it is, totally.
And then for the one word that describes the text as a whole.
I can guess. It's yellow.
It's yellow for sure.
Yeah.
And I chose this word. I've talked about it in previous podcasts, and Salinger uses it as an emotion that Holden often feels, and it's tied to depression, the lack to want to do anything, and ultimately anguish and sadness. And Holden also often feels this feeling. And for example, when his gloves were stolen, he'd found out who'd stolen them, and he was gonna go and get them, but his yellowness held him back, and he wouldn't fight for them, and he just didn't want to cause the trouble or leave the house.
Yeah, and even, that was in the beginning of the book. Throughout the entire book, he describes himself as yellow most of the time, and it's cowardly, and sad and despondent. Poor guy. I just want to mother him.
And what will we read next with each other?
Oh, gosh, I thought it was really fun to read this together. I know you were saying that you're interested in reading Eleanor and Park.
Mm-hmm.
I read that with Gib, and I would love to read it again, and we could talk about it, because it was the best. It's just a fun book. It's not a classic or anything, at least not yet, but to me, it was the best portrayal of first love I've ever read. And you're a boy, and you don't have to read, it's not reading books about love aren't just girl books. Gib loved it, and I think you would you would really like it.
And I guess romance is definitely a new genre for me, and I definitely love to try that.
Good point.
And share it with another person.
It's not just romance, it's just like family issues. It's just so good. I loved it. You will like it, and it's a quick read.
Well, this brings our journey to an end, but our adventure we share with Holden will always stay with us. And today in our final podcast for Catcher in the Rye, we talked about our perspectives and opinions on the ending of the book, our insight on whether we think our future generations will read it, our favorite part of this project, and a sentence, quote, and phrase
that we thought summed up the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in conclusion, we want to thank you all for listening, and we hope to see you soon.
Yes, we hope to be back next time with Eleanor and Park.
Just we have to have this.
Okay.
To begin.
Okay.
Okay.
Why don't we read what we read next together? We'll start that one again. Okay. Why don't I say that? Okay, so let's start with it. What's your thought? Oh, Duncan, so it's over. Is it over for us, or are we going to try to read something else?
I think we have one idea that of a book that we're going to read next, and that book is called Eleanor and Park. It's
a book that I read with Gib when he was in 8th grade, and I just read it because I didn't have anything to read when we were skiing. It's such an amazing such an amazing portrayal of first love, and I know you don't normally read romances, but it's a new genre, and you're interested in that.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
I think that's our next step, which brings our journey to an end.
But our adventure with Holden that we shared will definitely stay with us forever. Today in our final podcast on The Catcher in the Rye, we talked about our perspectives and opinions on the ending of the book, our insight on whether we think our future generations will read it.
We talked about our favorite part of the project and a quote, phrase, or word that we thought summed up the book.
In conclusion, we want to thank all of you for listening, and we hope to see you soon.
Until the next podcast, Eleanor and Park.